This man, unable to stand his girlfriend's constant complaining and nagging, decided to escape into the forest in search of a more peaceful life. Out there, there's no girlfriend, no phone, only hunting, cooking, and building a cozy shelter to survive. But the question is, how long can he last in the wilderness? Or will his noisy girlfriend track him down and drag him back home? Let's find out in the journey that follows. Today marks Tom's first day in this new region. He bid farewell to his old shelter and began a brand new journey. He left with only a few simple tools and a handful of dough balls made from cornmeal and cocoa powder. But these supplies would barely last him 3 days. So, after a quick meal and short rest, Tom hurried off to find a new home. In wilderness survival, the first priority is always water. So, on his search for a new shelter, he followed the trail of dried-up riverbeds. After half a day of searching, he finally discovered a perfect spot for a shelter. Beneath this giant boulder, a little clearing and cleanup would turn it into a decent temporary home. Seeing the sun begin to set, Tom immediately got to work. He cleared away the pebbles from the ground, leaving behind a layer of soft sand. The stones he removed weren't wasted, he piled them nearby as a windbreak. Then he spread another layer of sand, softer underfoot to make his night's sleep more comfortable. After finishing that, he set out nearby to find materials for his shelter. Unexpectedly, as he walked further down the canyon, he stumbled upon a small pool of water. Though a bit muddy, it tasted fine when he sampled it. Once boiled, it would make safe drinking water. But for now, he needed to finish his shelter first. He peeled some bark from nearby juniper trees, soft and fibrous, perfect for bedding or fire starting. He laid them over the soft sand, then gathered dry wood for the night. The desert's day-night temperature swings were brutal, scorching hot by day, freezing by night. Despite the daytime heat, the night would drop to just a few degrees. He had to get a fire going fast. Judging by the wear marks on his fire kit, you could tell Tom was a seasoned fire starter. After only a few minutes of friction, he coaxed a glowing ember to life. His clever setup paid off. The surrounding rock walls reflected the fire's warmth back toward him. Tonight, he'd finally sleep in comfort. Along the way here earlier, Tom had also gathered some purple berries. He ate a few, then drifted to sleep beside the crackling fire. The next morning, before even getting up, Tom quickly fed the fire. Tending to it through the night had worn him out, so he hadn't slept well. Still, his strength had returned a lot. After eating a bit of his homemade food, he tidied up the camp area, then set out once more to find a permanent home. Before long, he came across a small stream. Though not safe to drink yet, it was still perfect for washing his face. And if he keeps heading downstream, there's bound to be a river. So he decides to top up his water first. Same method, same taste, familiar as ever. As for bow drill fire starting, to Tom it's second nature, done with a flick of the wrist. Once the fire is crackling again, he takes out the small clay bowl he fired earlier, scoops some water from the stream, and sets it to boil. Then he cools it with a splash of cold water. Simple as that, he's got safe drinking water. After a short rest, he fills his gourd to the brim and continues downstream, still searching for the perfect place to settle. After following the river for a full day and night, Tom finally finds a spot that feels like home. It's not far from water ideal. Time to settle in and start building a shelter. He digs a pit in the ground, gathers some stones, and stacks them into a stone fire ring. Then he collects nearby logs and starts framing the shelter. First, he digs 2 holes, each a few inches deep, plants uprights to serve as main supports, lays a not-so-sturdy crossbeam, and tamps the surrounding soil tight. He lines the back with a row of logs. It isn't finished yet, but the day's light is nearly gone. Nights here get bitterly cold. He needs a fire now. He thought about doing a hand drill demo, but after 10+ minutes of grinding, the tinder still wouldn't catch. So he pulls out his trusty fire kit, switches to the bow drill, and after a few focused minutes, he's got an ember. Clearly, the right method beats brute effort. In no time, the stone fire pit is roaring, but it's already late. Hunting for food will have to wait. He's exhausted, energy spent, so he'll rest and try again tomorrow. At first light, feeling a bit stronger, Tom is up early. When he arrived here, he noticed the nearby creek was full of native fish. If he can figure out how to catch them, he'll have a steady source of protein. Cactus spines can serve as fish hooks, and these agave leaves are perfect for line packed with tough plant fibers. But to get those fibers, they need processing first. As a bonus, the pulp is rich in saponins, nature's soap, perfect for washing that unshaven face. He twists out the fibers, plies them together, and with deft hands, braids a sturdy fishing line, a fine piece of cordage, handmade. Nearby Willow makes a ready-made rod, and the hook that cactus spine fits the bill nicely. Heart pounding, hands trembling, he baits it with a small grub, and at last, Tom makes his first cast. After more than half an hour of tries, he still hasn't landed a fish. So he decides to change tactics. He drops the hook right at the mouth of a catfish's den, teases it for ages, only to have it slip the hook. Clearly, cactus spine hooks have their limits. Just isn't up to the job. Helpless, Tom decides to call it off for now. He'll try again after improving the hook. But when one door closes, another opens. Luck has a way of circling back. On the way back, he finds a wild rabbit already dead. He sniffs it, no rot, no foul smell. A closer check shows no obvious fatal wounds anywhere on the body, but the ears have red, bean-like bumps. He guesses it might have died from some infectious disease. But after 2 days with almost no food, Tom can't be picky. Back at camp, he quickly naps a stone knife, ready to process the rabbit. Still uneasy, he inspects it one more time. In the end, he figures it likely died of tularemia. That pathogen won't harm humans when handled right, but to be safe, he decides to avoid the head and the skin entirely. He sets aside the kidneys, liver, and heart and lays them on a hot slab of rock. Organ meats are rich in blood iron, heme, vitamins, and other nutrients you can't skip when you're surviving in the wild. As for the rabbit meat, Tom places it into his clay pot to slow braise. Cooked like this, the meat stays tender and juicy, and more of the goodness stays locked inside. He even drinks the last drop of broth. Even the hide doesn't go to waste. He tans it into a leather pouch. Poor rabbit used to the very last scrap. He chose this spot for another big reason. There's good clay underfoot. With a gourd and a little water, that clay becomes workable. Knead it by hand again and again, work out the air, smooth the body, shape it well, and you've got a solid earthen brick. But making enough bricks for a house? That's a marathon, not a sprint. For now, food still comes first. These Palo Verde trees bear pods like tiny yellow peas. Inside the pods are beans packed with plant protein. In this region, Palo Verde is everywhere in season. In no time, he gathers a good 2.5 kilos. They're edible straight off the tree, no processing needed. Flavor-wise, they're sweet, like fresh peas, and there's plenty enough to fill you up. After eating and catching his breath, Tom gets back to work, refining his shelter. Under a juniper, he strips away sheets of dry bark. The bark is soft and springy. With his handmade cordage, he lashes it together a juniper bark mattress, thick and cushy. Lay the sheepskin on top, stretch out, snack on the pods he gathered. This little life is starting to feel downright cozy. The next day, Tom spends the whole morning making bricks, and only at noon does he head out for more food. But he never expected what he was about to find. On the way, he stumbles upon a dead bull. At first, he thinks he's struck gold again until he hears that brittle sound. Clearly, this beast's been gone for at least a year. There's nothing edible left on it. But Tom, being Tom, never leaves empty-handed. He tears off a strip of hide and pries loose a few bones. The rest is too heavy to carry. He'll come back for it later. Then he heads for the river, soaking the hide to soften it up for later use. Since he's already there, he figures might as well take a bath. But as he washes, those same fish he couldn't catch before swim right up nibbling at his feet, feasting on 50 years of calluses. The nerve! Tom's so mad he almost drops dead on the spot. He grumbles, "I haven't eaten you yet, and you're eating me first?" He reaches out to grab them, but the clever fish scatter the moment there's no more skin to chew on. So Tom pulls out his old cactus spine hook again. Half an hour later, still nothing. Not even a nibble. He starts thinking maybe a chunk of foot skin would work better as bait. Frustrated, he grabs one of the bull bones, eyes narrowing on a catfish lurking nearby. After one wild swing too many, he smashes part of his own shelter. Broken hut or not, a man's still gotta eat. Around the shrubs nearby, he spots clusters of manzanita berries. They're last year's crop, dry, shriveled, but still good. Crush them, and they make Tom's favorite drink. But after being gone so long, his fire's out again. He spends ages bow drilling another spark. Out here, even the smallest task eats up time. Finally, his drink bubbles away, and he boils a few beans to go with it. The constant exertion has left him utterly drained. After eating, he lies down for a quick rest, but no sooner does he close his eyes than the sky opens up, it starts to rain. His shelter, half open as it is, offers no protection. Grumbling, Tom gets up and starts stripping bark again. Back at camp, he follows the same trick he used before, weaving the bark into a crude roof. It may look rough, but as long as the rain doesn't pour too hard, Tom laughs and says, "As long as my beans stay dry, I'll live." After that rain, the clay pit he'd been digging for bricks softens up nicely, revealing a rich layer of orange clay beneath. So Tom decides to try making a clay pot. First, he carefully picks out every pebble from the clay. Then he adds water and kneads it into a smooth lump. To make the surface glossier, he even mixes in a mysterious liquid of his own. Once dried, he polishes the pot with a smooth stone, readying it for the fire. Clearly, Tom's 2.5 years of practice have made him a master of bow drilling. Soon, the campfire blazes, and the pot goes in to bake. While waiting, Tom doesn't idle. He climbs another Palo Verde tree, harvesting more pods. Right now, these beans are still his main source of food. Most of his days are spent making pottery and gathering beans. After several hours, the pot finally comes out of the fire. He taps it gently with his finger. The crisp ring tells him it's a success. It's only a prototype, sure, but now that he knows it works, it's just a matter of time. In the days that follow, Tom keeps up the clay production. His pile of bricks is finally growing, and his food stores are holding steady. He eats his beans, nibbles on berries, and sometimes roasts cactus for variety. Not fancy, but it keeps him going. Still, with no animal protein or fat, his strength begins to fade. So finally, Tom looks around and adds ants to the menu. Tiny, yes, but meat nonetheless, and their protein content is dozens of times higher than beef, perfect for a much-needed energy boost. As the days go by, the once green pods ripen into golden beans. Under every Palo Verde tree, the ground is carpeted with them. They now provide Tom a steady source of plant protein, fat, and carbohydrates. To collect them more efficiently, Tom weaves wooden sticks together using agave cord. He adds a willow branch for the frame and a dry plank for the base, creating a handmade basket to gather beans. With that basket, he can finally collect them by the armful. In no time, he's filled an entire basket, but these beans are already very dry. They'll need soaking before they're edible. Add in the berries he's been foraging, and his food stores are looking solid. Since he doesn't have to worry about meals for now, Tom decides it's time to remodel his shelter. After weeks under the blazing sun, the adobe bricks are tough as stone, and there's a good stack of them now. Plenty for a modest upgrade. He starts by sketching the footprint with a stick, then hauls the bricks over and lines them up, row by row. For the gaps, he stuffs in mud for now. When the wall hits 3 courses, he breaks for food. He boils the beans he'd soaked earlier, then picks some salty wild greens nearby and a succulent called purslane. These weeds are common the world over, and with no fertilizers or pesticides, they're safe enough to eat. If you can't ID them, better just look. While the pot simmers, he keeps at it, adding another layer of bricks and packing juniper bark into the seams. By the time he's done, the beans and greens are ready. He grabs his bone ladle and tucks in with gusto. That satisfied grin says it all tastes pretty great. Lunch done, he gets back to work. He angles the wall into a sloped profile, props the old crossbeam back up, and half encloses the fire pit beside the shelter to bounce heat where he needs it. Then he lays on the roof poles again, tops them with his woven thatch and extra bark he hasn't woven yet, for more cover. Now this shelter finally looks snug and secure. That pink spiny fruit you see here grows on these desert cacti. To eat them, you've got to scrape off the needles first. Inside, they're packed with sugar and vitamins, prime fare for life in the wild. Flavor-wise, a lot like dragon fruit. One juicy bite, and Tom's face lights up in bliss, as if he's back in easier times. Before he leaves, he snacks more and bags a few. Wherever he goes, whatever he's doing, he keeps a couple to munch on. Tom, as usual, the ropes Tom uses all come from the agave plant, but today, he's not collecting it to make ropes. This time, the ever-meticulous Tom plans to bathe with it. These plants contain plenty of natural saponin, pure, chemical-free soap straight from nature, even better than store-bought soap. After scrubbing off layers of dirt and grime, Tom feels completely refreshed. He heads back to the bull carcass he found earlier, gathering a few remaining bones to bring home. To him, those bones still hold many uses. Nothing goes to waste here. Over the next few days, thanks to the endless supply of cactus fruit, Tom devotes all his energy to perfecting his pottery work. The weather's slowly turning cold, he needs a proper home for the coming winter, but just as he's hard at work, a swarm of locusts appears nearby. For a man desperate for protein, this is a feast from heaven. He drops everything and starts catching them by hand. Each one a tiny, jumping packet of protein. Back at camp, he eagerly strings them up, roasts them over the fire for about 2 minutes. One bite, crispy, smoky, savory. A rich aftertaste, crunchy like fried chicken, ugly but delicious. And the protein content dozens of times higher than beef. With protein back in his system, his energy surges again. Now he can lift wood and stone bare-handed. All this work lays the foundation for his future home. To craft higher quality pottery, he needs much more heat. The old campfire just isn't enough anymore. So Tom decides to build a kiln. He digs 2 pits in the ground, connected at the bottom, then lines the opening with stones. A simple yet effective clay furnace. Air tunnels through, feeding the fire and raising the heat. The temperature climbs steadily. He sets the molded bowls inside, lights the kiln once again, stokes it with more firewood, then eats a bit and turns in for the night. At sunrise, Tom hurries over to check on his kiln. The heat has cooled naturally overnight. No cracks, no damage at all. A flawless firing. A total success. In the days that followed, Tom continued gathering materials for his new home. He prepared plenty of agave fiber ropes and a pile of large adobe bricks for his fireplace. Looking over his growing supply of materials, Tom finally decided it was time to build his new shelter. He picked up a stick, mentally mapping out the design of his future home, then began construction in earnest. As for his old shelter, he decided to keep it until the new one was finished. Even with all his resources, a proper house would still take time. So he started by extending walls around the old shelter, something to block the cold wind for now. At least he'd stay warm while he worked. To make it through the harsh winter comfortably, Tom designed his new home with a fireplace and heating wall. Every brick was sealed tightly with wet clay, no cracks, no gaps allowed. He even stomped the joints tight with his own feet, ensuring not a whisper of wind could pass through. Soon the walls stood 1/2 meter high. He brought over larger bricks to cap the top of the fire wall, and before sealing it, he added stones inside to retain and radiate heat longer. Later, when winter came, he could sit right on top and stay warm. As the fireplace neared completion, Tom took a short break to craft new pottery, sliding the pieces into the fire to bake overnight. That way, by the time the fireplace was done, he'd have cookware ready too. The next morning, he retrieved his new pottery and returned to work on the shelter. But days of poor nutrition had left him weak. Every swing of his arm felt heavier. Still, determined to move in soon, he gritted his teeth and pushed through. After sealing every gap in the fireplace with yellow clay, 3 long days and nights later, Tom finally completed his masterpiece. But a fine fireplace deserves a proper chimney to match, so he added one. The entire heating system was brilliantly designed, from the hearth to the heat wall to the chimney outside. Honestly, it looked like something an engineer would build. You'd think he'd studied it somewhere. With that done, Tom finally dismantled his old hut, ready to spend his first night in the new one. Though, truth be told, his moving speed was something else. He joked he should have hired a mover off a classified site. After hauling the adobe bricks from the old place over, he reinstalled the original roof. It still wasn't finished, but already it felt worlds better than before. He pulled out his trusty kit time to light the fireplace. After all this practice, his bow drill fire-making was masterful, a spark of hope in mere minutes. Flame bloomed, warm and steady. And so, beside the hearth eating foraged berries, Tom spent his very first night at home. At dawn next day, he woke shivering. He'd slept so soundly, he forgot the firewood. The chill snapped him awake early, a sharp reminder that winter was close. He needed to speed up construction fast. But he was still short on adobe bricks, so he'd have to make bricks and build the shelter at the same time. Thankfully, the remaining wall work was simpler, just stack layer by layer. One row at a time, up it went. 2 days later, he finally finished the walls of the new home. But without modern tools, collecting roof timber was its own ordeal. By the light of a little oil lamp made from bark, he scorched the trunks, then cut them with stone tools over and over again until he had the beams he needed. Each log was scraped clean with a stone knife, then charred at the base over the fire for durability. After that, he braided thicker agave ropes, lashed the beams together, and raised the frame of the house. Even drained as he was, he couldn't resist testing the sturdiness. See? Solid. All right then, back to work. It was obvious. Compared to when he arrived, he'd slimmed down a lot. Way too much. You couldn't help but feel for him. Out here, even simple tasks demanded huge amounts of time and energy. Just finishing this much was a marathon. For roofing material, Tom set his sights on a nearby juniper. He stripped it clean, bark and all, then left satisfied, arms full of shingles. Back home, with the bark he already had, he carefully layered the new roof. Piece by piece, he covered every last gap. 2 big stones became the new home's threshold, and just like that, the house was more or less complete. Ever the stickler, Tom gave himself a yucca soap bath before moving into the new home. He scrubbed up with yucca until he was squeaky clean, skin fresh and smooth, then headed back into the shelter, hugging a bundle of bean pods and basking in long-lost warmth. Life in the wild this long had grown his beard into a thicket, so he decided it was time for a trim. Shatter a piece of obsidian in his hand, and you get a razor-sharp edge. Obsidian is mostly silicon dioxide, basically like glass. Its conchoidal fracture makes shell-like blades, keen as razors. Shard in hand, he processed more yucca to whip up a foamy lather, making the shave glide and saving his cheeks from nicks. Seeing his face red and puffy, you can't help but feel a pang for the guy. Still, it looked pretty good, and he seemed years younger. To cook in the new home, he crafted a perforated clay plate, simmered a pot of beans on it, the first meal in his new place. With food and a roof secured, Tom thought again of those native river fish. Lately, beans alone had his taste buds bored stiff. He braided canes with yucca cordage, used a vine as the keel, and fashioned a fish trap. At the river, he scouted and picked a prime spot, then set the trap. He stacked stones around it to weigh it down and boost his odds. Work done, he took a quick bath nearby and waited. About half an hour later, he hauled up the trap, and as feared, it was empty. A bit of a gut punch. Worse, snow started falling on the way back. Tom rushed to haul his adobe bricks indoors. In this region, winter snow is rare, so the squall caught him off guard. He hadn't even built a proper door, so he stacked bricks as a makeshift barrier for the night. At dawn, he shoved aside the adobe, and the world outside lay buried in white, which, needless to say, made survival even harsher. Still, since he was here, he'd adapt. If you can't fight it, find a way to use it. He cooked cactus fruit down into jam, filled a clay cup with clean snow, and just like that made a fruit smoothie. Gotta hand it to him. The man's a creative genius. Thankfully, the blizzard didn't last, and a few days later, life returned to the landscape. After days cooped up in the shelter, he couldn't stand it. Back to work he went. The storm had passed, but the place still needed a proper door. He planned on living here for the long haul. In short order, he lashed juniper bark with yucca cordage into a stout door. For the installation, he rigged a wooden pole as a makeshift hinge and latch. After days of digging and excavating, Tom, the clay pit he's been digging for material is now over a meter deep, and the deeper he goes, the finer the clay gets. Using clay coils to build the rim, Tom crafted 2.5 planting pots. Since he plans to settle long-term in the wild, he needs at least a basic garden. After all, living off luck isn't exactly stable. But in this dry season, seeds won't survive if planted straight in the ground. So he starts them in these pots, so a tiny splash of water keeps them moist. Once they're sturdy, he'll transplant them outside, boosting the odds they'll take root. With that done, the ever-stubborn Tom grabs his fish trap and heads back to the river. This time he changes things up, 2 plans instead of 1. He catches a tadpole and pins it to a cactus spine hook, twitching the dry grass tip to mimic a struggling bug and lure the fish in to feed. After several frustrating misses, Tom finally lands his hard-won catch. He can't even wait to head back. He grills the fish right on a riverside hot stone. For his life out here, this is a massive step forward. Watching that fish sizzle on the slab, even I and Tom can't help but drool a little. In the blink of an eye, a couple of weeks pass. Thanks to careful tending, those seeds have sprouted and rooted. Time to transplant them outside. But first, he scoops ash from the hearth and mixes it into his garden bed to balance the soil's pH and fend off pests and disease. Then, one by one, he sets in corn, beans, and pumpkin seedlings, nestling them into the freshly amended earth. To keep them watered, he even fires a few clay vessels for storage-dedicated watering pots. He's really pulling out all the stops for these seedlings. For now, though, he doesn't actually need them to feed him. The local forage and finds are enough to cover his daily needs at this stage. Not far from the shelter, he also discovers a tree that bears something like tiny tomatoes, and a tart berry locals call sour plum. Those deep red fruits are mouth-puckeringly sour. With them, he can brew a drink that tastes like lemonade. Whenever the work wears him out and thirst hits, Tom pours himself a cup, and the fatigue melts away with every sip. As for the shelter, it's solid in most ways, but its height makes the 1.85-meter Tom duck awkwardly every time he comes and goes. And he's fired a fresh batch of adobe bricks, so he decides it's time for a renovation. First, he strips off the old roof, then raises the walls with more adobe. To brighten the interior, he even works in 4 full windows. Between every brick, Tom presses in clay to seal the joints tight so the place he's building can outlast him by generations. Walls sturdy, roof steady. Once the walls reach about 1.5 meters, he finally pauses, props the original frame back up, and lashes branches across it as rafters. A new roof of juniper bark goes over the top, and the makeover is complete. Raised and refined, the little house suddenly looks grand. At last, Tom can stand tall inside without stooping. As days slide by, Tom is about to celebrate his first birthday in the wild. He starts prepping ingredients a few days early. First, a haul of cactus fruit. Their high sugar makes them perfect for a small batch fruit wine. He scoops the pulp, seals it in a jar, and lets it ferment. Then he gathers some holly leaf cherries, ripe and glossy, plus acorns he can mill into flour. With these, Tom plans to bake himself a birthday cake. Back home, he shells and dries the acorns, then crushes them on a stone quern, and 5 minutes later has a fistful of fine acorn meal. But for a real cake, that's nowhere near enough. He spends hours more, grinding and sifting, until he finally has a proper stash. It still needs extra processing to be edible, because acorn flour is loaded with tannins that make it mouth-puckeringly bitter. So Tom keeps adding fresh water, leaching the meal slowly, washing those tannins away, step by step. He keeps rinsing until the bitterness is gone, only then is it ready to eat. To add a touch of ceremony to his birthday, Tom shapes 2 half-spheres out of clay, drying them carefully. He threads a cord through the holes he left earlier, forming a nearly perfect orb. But it's not for food, it's what locals call a piñata. Here, people believe that breaking it on your birthday brings good fortune for the year ahead. Once that's done, he tastes the acorn flour that's been soaking half a day, the bitterness is gone, and it's ready for the next step. Even the rinse water doesn't go to waste. He pours it into his vegetable patch. Under Tom's care, the garden has flourished beautifully. Soon enough, he'll be harvesting his own pumpkins and corn. Back at home, he folds cactus pulp into the refined acorn flour. Turns out, Tom's making himself a fruitcake classy choice for a man in the wild. Once the cake takes shape, he sprinkles another layer of fruit on top, covers it with a clay bowl, and slides it into the hearth to bake. Then, stick in hand, he heads outside, ready to smash his birthday piñata. He pulls off his improvised cloth, ties it over his eyes, chants a goofy little mantra, and begins his wild dance of destiny. Inside, the piñata loads of cactus fruit, standing in for candy. But just as he cracks it open, rain starts pouring down. He snatches a quick bite, then dashes inside to savor his long-awaited feast. The homemade fruit wine, no additives, purely natural, its fragrance alone is intoxicating. A bowl just isn't enough. He swaps it for a giant clay cup and lifts out his long-awaited cake. It's not the prettiest creation, but taste was never the point still. To a man who's been away from civilization this long, it's a feast fit for a king. Outside, the storm howls, but inside his handmade refuge, he sits with cake, fruit wine, and the quiet joy of solitude and freedom. Each time he seeks salt for survival needs, whenever Tom needs salt, he has to trek far down the mountain, so he always travels light, just a gourd of water on his back. Out here, in this desert and rocky wasteland, saltwater lakes are scattered everywhere. When the dry season comes, the water evaporates, leaving a white crust of salt. Normally, this salt needs washing and refining before it's edible, but for Tom, there's no room for luxury or choice. This time of year, around his shelter, countless cactus fruits are ripening. They grow thickly, and the yield is tremendous. But they spoil fast good only for a few days of full bellies, so Tom decides to preserve them, turning them into long-lasting rations. After days under the scorching sun, the fruits lose almost all their moisture. That's when he starts the next step. He crushes them all with stones, then kneads the pulp into any shape he likes, round balls or bar-shaped energy bites. Since the fruit is naturally packed with sugar and now almost water-free, each bite is an explosion of calories. As Tom's wilderness life grows easier, he soon receives his very first visitor. A friend from the city, tired of urban boredom, has come to experience wild living firsthand. Tom assigns him a few simple tasks, then heads off to tend his garden. Surprisingly, the guy catches on fast weaving ropes like a pro. When Tom returns, he finds his friend has made a bottle and a cup all on his own. Clearly, this rookie's got potential. So Tom takes him to the river to face one of his lifelong challenges, fishing. He's watched the river teem with life for months, but catching anything has always been hopeless. Sure enough, after half a day of trying, the two come up empty-handed. But the friend's not giving up, he fashions his own handmade spear. The first strike misses, the fish darts away, but the next hit lands a catfish. Turns out the kid's got some real skill. At this rate, they might actually feast tonight. But dreams are easy, reality is tougher. After a whole afternoon, they've still only got that one fish. So they wash up, head home, and start dinner. Tom cooks the lone catfish with beans, turning it into a steaming pot of fresh fish soup. To welcome his friend properly, Tom brings out his most treasured fruit wine. The two share a few humble drinks, then sit back to back, spending their first night together in the little hut. What Tom didn't expect, his friend leaves the very next morning. He thought the kid would stay a few more days, and the sudden goodbye stings a little. But before leaving, his friend gifts him a piece of roasted pork, a rare comfort for a man of the wild. Determined to make the most of this hard-won treasure, Tom decides to smoke it into jerky, so it can last for weeks. He slices it into long strips, threads them together, and hangs them above his smoky chimney. The leftover fat, meanwhile, goes straight into the pot, a rich stew for the night's meal. Even before tasting it, Tom is so thrilled he runs outside, doing pull-ups in excitement. When he returns, the pork is ready greasy, yes, but too delicious to stop eating. He steps out to check on the smoked meat again. It's cooked through, but still holds too much moisture. The aroma, though rich, smoky, irresistible, makes him take a small bite. Only then does he hang it back for more smoking. Once the jerky is done, Tom's life in the wilderness will rise to a whole new level. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the little bell so you won't miss any of the next survival adventures. Finally, share your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next video.